We don't need to do it this time, but why not? Yeah, we're going to do it nonetheless because it's part of the thing now. And that was probably the most in time that we had in the history of doing this.
Yeah, we're in the same room, so.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, it's like, and we don't need it this time. So it's the pressure's off influence. Mm-hmm. In any case, welcome to Spartalknewztalk, your plucky working class source for the news you need and the takes you trust. As per usual, I'm your host, Spartalknewztalk, casting from the most charming little neighborhood tucked in between a hornet's nest of highways, southwest Detroit, Mexican town. Returning to the arena, we have a lean, mean, left all of its toxins in the latrine machine, Haakim Walker. Haakim, you are done with your detox, aren't you?
This first day having a libation.
Yes.
So we have some pretty good options for that.
We have pretty good libations.
Do we want to go into that now?
I think so.
Okay.
You going to set it up?
Yes. So welcome to Spartalk, and we will be doing a very good cocktail for Cinco de Mayo. That's the get.
Yeah, and the background.
And the background here. Boom, guys. So tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo. So Cinco de Mayo celebrates the Battle of Puebla, which is the battle where the Mexicans defeated Napoleon III's army and the Franco-Mexican War. So 2 years later, there was a song called La Paloma that was released in Spain that people believe that inspired this cocktail. This cocktail is the #1 cocktail in Mexico and is actually the national cocktail of Mexico, the Paloma cocktail, okay? So we're gonna be making that today in celebration. And we're gonna be using this good local source tequila. It's gonna be 1.5 ounces of tequila. And this is a variation of the cocktail, so we'll be, so we're gonna use this grapefruit syrup and give it a little effervescence. Use 1 ounce of that. And we still are going to use fresh lime juice, 1/2 ounce of that. I'm going to rim that real glass up real quick. Quick shake. And pour it in the glass. And still we'll top it off with grapefruit soda. And we'll rim that with grapefruit and a lime wheel. There you go. Paloma cocktail. Enjoy, guys.
Well, they are fantastic. Cheers.
Cheers, Paloma.
Paloma.
Yep. Yeah, salute.
And may I say, welcome back to the fold. And thank you for the cocktail. It's delicious. Last week, we just put out some cocktail videos. The week before that, we talked to anti-masker and plandemic advocate conspiracy theorist Mobius. This week is May the 4th. Tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo, as you said. And today we're filming things a little bit differently. First off, Haakim, what inspired you for the new setup?
Well, I wanted to do a little more streamlined for lighting, a little more streamlined for audio. Also, we have some other YouTube properties we're trying to push forward. So
it's like it's like a YouTube reaction video a little bit. I'm liking it. But I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, this is all rigging. This is all kind of, hopefully this gets a little more professional, more streamlined. So we'll hopefully be able to push out more content. That's the idea.
Yes, and it's partially because today is a clip show, which we've been doing the first of the month. We don't do this. We usually do interviews, so we'll talk about that later on. Second, though, do you have any thoughts on our conversation with Mobius?
Oh, that was a very interesting conversation.
It was.
Okay, so this was your birthday present. Obviously, I said that before.
And I was a little let down, I gotta say. Because I don't know, I consider myself borderline leftist conspiracy theorist, I think. But I'm actually able to assert things. I actually have facts. And it was very hard to get Mobius to assert anything, to get him to actually say why anything is happening that he's claiming.
Maybe he'll be able to come back on and give a better, more accurate assessment of his opinions.
We'll see. I said, I was pretty let down. It was very how you get annoyed because he was saying he was Mobius, the weird hippie guy. You know how that you get annoyed by some hippie bullshit from a hippie that's just kind of saying some vague stuff about what's wrong with society.
Yeah, I'm from California. I know hippie bullshit.
That's what I got from him. It was just okay, so but what are you saying? What are you actually claiming? And it was I had to, preempt anything that he, whatever.
Maybe he'll have a better account for himself during a panel show.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, the one thing I will agree with Mobius on is that Bill Gates is a piece of shit. And but for exactly the opposite reason. I think he thinks that we're as hard as it was to get him to admit that he thinks that Bill Gates is microchipping us or he has no idea exactly why he's trying to get vaccines into as many people as possible.
Right.
The opposite is true. The opposite is true.
The thing is, he couldn't explain his logic for why Bill Gates was. Yeah.
Right. It's like he wants money, and so he lies to you, and then also he wants to get it into as many arms as possible.
Yeah, but what's the motivation?
That's what I'm saying. It's why would he? So this is him being confronted about why he's holding back vaccines, and confronted very lightly, by the way. Washington, D.C. Is super softball with him, but it's the hardest ball anybody's gotten, in terms of him. So let's take a look at this and see exactly what he thinks about why he's holding back third world countries. He's holding back vaccines from third world countries on the basis of intellectual property.
There's been some speculation that the changing intellectual property rules.
Or no, I guess this is Sky News, and it's picked up from.
As you say, the recipe for vaccines to be shared would be helpful. And do you think that would be helpful?
No.
Why not?
Well, there's only so many vaccine factories in the world, and people are very serious about the safety of vaccines. And so moving something that had never been done, moving a vaccine from, say, a J&J factory into a factory in India, that it's novel. It's only because of our grants and our expertise that can happen at all. The thing that's holding things back in this case is not intellectual property. There's not some idle vaccine factory with regulatory approval that makes magically safe vaccines.
And the regulatory approval is exactly
has to be looked at in a very careful way. There's all sorts of issues around intellectual property having to do with medicines, but not in terms of how quickly we've been able to ramp up the volume here. You know, I remember how shocked people were when we said we were going to do second sources in these developing country factories. You know, that was a novel thing. We got all the rights from the vaccine companies. They didn't hold it back. They were participating. I do a regular phone call with the pharmaceutical CEOs to make sure that work is going at full speed.
So, just so we're clear here, we paid for these vaccines.
We did pay for these vaccines.
We completely paid for these vaccines. Yeah. Him using our regulatory infrastructure to against third world countries in terms of the production, so flagrantly here, is exactly what he did with Microsoft and the monopoly that it went on there. And honestly...
Yeah, through Asia and Europe.
And honestly, it's like his excuses here, I mean, what it seems like is the IT guy in your office telling you why you can't install a thing yourself when it's pretty easy to install a thing yourself. But because he has the ear of the administration, the management, you know, he can implement things the way he wants to implement them. But let's pivot to a more fun story, I guess. Unless you have something else to say on that matter. So the Bidens have visited the Carters recently, and a funny thing happened, and it kind of demonstrates how not planned out, you know, some of Biden's, you know, public facing is. And, you know, like, he's supposed to be an ultra curated candidate or whatever, and I would, you know, assert. That's what I'm saying. But everybody's saying that he himself is a pawn in this ultra curated, like, sort of like, but, you know, like, honestly, a lot of the people working for him are kind of bungling, and he's a lot more able than I would expect from a man his age, generally speaking, every time, you know, he has a chance to be in front of it. But I just thought this clip was funny because, and not that this is necessarily important in any ways, but it's going viral for a very particular reason. Let's take a look.
We want to switch gears now to a brand new look at a very exclusive meeting. When President Biden came to Georgia last week, he paid a closed-door visit to a longtime friend, former President Jimmy Carter. The Carter Center tweeting out these photos of the two presidents and the first ladies. Look how adorable they are.
Look how
switch spots there.
Disproportionate they are.
And Rosalind Carter, big smiles all around there.
It's like Biden like 6'8" or
Dude,
something.
they're hobbits.
Years.
It's like it's like,
I mean, how do you not smile?
It's like Gandalf visiting. How do you not smile at Gandalf visiting the hobbits?
Yeah.
So that's all it is. It's very funny how big they are compared to the Carters. And
it's like they're both Shaq, man. Like, what is going on? Like, you know?
No, it makes no kind of sense. Especially, I mean, like, I could seriously imagine Rosalind Carter being that small compared to Joe Biden, just because she's an old woman.
Like the proportion, like
I know it's still weird, but
he would have to be like 7'3",
or maybe she. But I'm saying, like, maybe he has the shortest lap in the world, and she has the longest lap in the world, and that's what's connecting that everything. But like, look at Jill.
You shrink when you get older, but
yes. But look at Jill versus Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man. Joe Biden is 6'7" though, so it's fine.
What? Joe Biden is 6'7"? I wish that were true.
Everyone knows that. It's common knowledge.
This was a funny clip. I almost went with another clip, just being that was just like paint by numbers. Like, oh yeah, this is what they visited them. They couldn't come to the inauguration, so they visited them, and they're old time allies, whatever. But I liked this one particularly because she was so happy with the photo, and just the size differences conferences, flew by her like nothing. Apparently what happened here actually is that they were using a certain photo, you might know
filter.
Photo filter, you might like not a fisheye lens or whatever, but essentially, right? Like
they're using like an anamorphic
when
lens.
it's like wider on the outside.
Yeah.
So
it's a pan and tilt lens.
yes, but it's like, why would you do? I mean, why would you do that? Like, and not like, and then just put out this as the photo. If you were super slick.
And anyone who knows this type of photography is not the type of lens you would use for this type of photo anyway, it would be weird.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like this is what I'm saying. Biden is supposed to have like such a more slick team than Trump, but like it's exactly like when Trump came out to announce something about it was around the time of the $2,000 checks, whatever, and he came out with a super tiny desk. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah.
And a super tiny desk.
Yeah.
And that was worse because it was actually a tiny desk.
Yeah.
But like, this is still pretty bad because this was the official photo that they put out, and it's just very funny. I mean, like, presidents be fucking up all the time. I mean, like, and it fills one with a little bit of confidence that they're not, and maybe that's cured. Maybe the conspiracy, maybe the deep state is making the fuck ups work out so that we throw us off the scent.
I think my tax dollars should go to better PR, at least.
Well,
or at least lens quality.
Better lens quality, definitely.
Neither.
But you know what? You know who's trying to decrease your taxes and make them go towards more sensible things?
Who's that?
Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Is that my home state? Is that what
that is your home state. You can't vote there anymore, can you?
Yeah, I'm out the game, baby.
Well, yeah. out the game. Maybe you'll sneak in because there's no basis for voting, and that's another thing that Caitlyn Jenner's going to fix, I think. Let's take a look at her campaign ad.
Thanks Olympic gold medalist Caitlyn Jenner is I've always been a dreamer.
California was once the envy of the world. We had what everyone else wanted. The American dream grew up here. Yet career politicians and their policies have destroyed that dream. It's been locked away.
What is even happening there? It's like, let's empty this bucket of syringes.
Burned down.
That's San Francisco.
It's San Francisco. It's just like, we're just collecting. Because there's a needle exchange. She's against the needle exchange, which is probably actually a very good policy in San Francisco.
Compassionate.
Probably saved a lot of lives, actually.
I came here with a dream 48 years ago to be the greatest athlete in the world. Now I enter a different kind of race, arguably my most important one yet. To save California. I want to carry the torch for the parents who had to balance work and their child's education, for business owners who were forced to shut down, for pastors
she's got black people
too,
who lost their home in a fire, for an entire generation of students who lost a year of education.
And there's no reason for that at all.
As elitists. And the people of California as the warriors, the kings, and the angels. We never take kindly to glass ceilings here. Instead, we shatter them. We're the trailblazers, the innovators. California is facing big hurdles. Now, we need leaders who are unafraid to lead to new heights. Who are unafraid to challenge and to change the status quo.
I want to prove that it is absolutely possible if we only do it together.
California, it's time to reopen our schools, reopen our businesses, reopen the Golden Gates, So I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, I'm ready to be governor for all Californians. To reclaim our true identity, to bring back the gold to the Golden State. Now is the time to achieve that summit, to be the shining city on the hill.
These isolated...
Very long fucking
Yeah, it's way too long. But there's these isolated ones of like the teachers wiping down desks. It's just like, let's just gloss over the reason any of this happened. Not saying that... I'm not saying that that there aren't reasons that, for instance, tent cities, there's all sorts of things that could be fixed about California. Caitlyn Jenner, in my opinion, is not going to do it.
Caitlyn Jenner is not the answer to fix California. First of all, she has a very conservative views.
Exactly. Like what?
Like don't align with most Californians.
Well, Texas just made it so and they used California as an example consistently. They just made it illegal for people to set up tents if they don't have housing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it's just like if you don't. Why don't any cities just set up housing? Just set up housing. Like, until you get on your feet or whatever, you can live here. And it's not like, Caitlyn Jenner is not going to do that. Caitlyn Jenner is the reality show politician, just like Trump was.
Absolutely, but do we have to remind us that she killed someone?
Yeah,
remember that?
That's the thing, and then it was
she committed vehicular manslaughter.
And she had a reality show right after that.
Yeah, and got away with it. Right. Do I need to remind people of that? Yeah,
dude, it's like public, like a public relations campaign can gloss over everything. Yeah. Everything. It was exactly, I think, what was so horrible about 2016 is that the Clinton machine was glossing over a bunch of shit. Yeah. The Trump machine was glossing over a bunch of shit. So everybody was just like, I don't fucking care. Most people didn't vote, and reality show won out because enough people watched The Apprentice or whatever.
Well, celebrity, when people are confused, always wins.
Right. So
being famous trumps everything.
Right.
When information is vague.
So what do you think? Like, Gavin Newsom.
I don't even like.
I don't like Gavin Newsom.
I don't like Gavin Newsom.
But I'm saying Gavin Newsom not being on the Kardashians.
He should get on the Kardashians.
Well, he's not invited because she's got to be an executive producer at some point.
Well, can you get on Love and Hip Hop or something like that?
Well, that's the thing. Do you think Caitlyn is going to win?
I think he should get on Love and Hip Hop first of all, but okay.
I think is a very dangerous precedent altogether. But do you think that she's going to win?
I think she can win. That's how little faith I have.
Right.
In politics right now. I think she has a chance to
Arnold
win.
won.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan and Arnold won. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both fucking, actors.
Yeah. And for Republican governors in that state, they've had worse. They've definitely had worse.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at something that Caitlyn has on the issues, because there's a lot of laws being passed right now about trans kids, which I'm sure trans kids are just thrilled about. And I'm sure that this isn't going to harm anybody in general. We will have somebody on about it soon, but let's take a look at what she says about trans girls competing in female sports. I mean, she would be an expert in this, particularly if her trans experience and her sports experience were separated by 30 years, but 40 years, right? More than that.
Yeah.
Almost more than 40 years.
Yeah.
Because it was the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So let's take a look.
I
Caleb, so there's legislation in various states to ban biological boys who are trans from playing girl sports in school. What's your opinion on that?
This is a question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girl sports in school. It just isn't fair. And we have to protect girl sports in our school.
But if someone transitions and now identifies as a girl, isn't it delegitimizing their identity to prevent
Have a good day.
So, yeah, super quick one. I try to make these as quick as possible. You know, like in general, I do think that there are fairness standards that don't make sense in terms and when it comes to I can't remember the MMA fighter that was
Fallon Fox.
Yeah, exactly. Like I thought that like her not being honest is a problem, but there are also I do think that there are trans girls that that want to pursue sports and do not belong in boys' sports. They do not belong in boys' sports. So the only way that they'd actually progress is through girls' sports currently. Now,
well, okay, so you're saying that biological boys
that are trans or whatever, that are young age, and we can talk about that all day. Right. But but if they want to compete, they might have to compete. And by the way, there are global laws and rules that have kept biological or female at birth women out of female sports because
their testosterone levels
exactly
are too high. It happened,
and that is fucked up. But also, that's what I'm saying. There are girls, female at birth that would probably be better suited in male sports. So I think it really I think that ultimately it should be like a heavyweight, lightweight sort of thing, where there isn't just a girls' sports and a male sports, but that genders can play together. They just have to think about fairness as they go. And I agree that there are circumstances that are unfair, but just excluding trans and making one rule for trans people and another rule for cis people is very Jim Crow-y. I mean, very, very fucked up and unfair especially unfair for kids. And we can talk about what's unfair and fair for trans kids outside of that, but I think that gendered sports is fucked up in different ways as well. Personally.
I wouldn't say it's Jim Crow-y, but I would say that there is something to be said about making sure.
No, Haakim, I think I can speak better. No,
but I think there is something to be said about making sure that there is always something to be said about protecting women's sports, because they did work a very long time to institutionalize that and have opportunities, but that does not mean that we delegitimize women who transition into those areas. Yeah. It just means that this is not a quick fix and we make a quick decision.
It's not cut and dry. It's not cut and dry.
It's way too complicated to be we're just going to decide this in one season, or we're just going to decide. It's super
But also, it's just why do you think women's sports is worth protecting like that? Out of curiosity.
Because they've worked very hard to get to the point where there's some.
I know, but don't you think co-ed integrated?
No, I don't think that some sports, women will tell you that they would not have a place in certain.
I will agree with boxing and MMA and beating. Nobody wants to see a man beat up a girl.
Well, there's just some sports that women compete differently than men,
right?
And they deserve to have their own spaces to where they can compete and be very good at. And that's a thing. They've worked hard to build those spaces for themselves.
All I'm saying is that there are ways that we can open up sports more, and I don't care about sports much, but I think there are ways.
I'm not a huge sports person either.
I think we could open up sports a little bit more and rethink them, and the solution until that time is not to exclude these trans kids from any space that they're comfortable in, and they're not going to be comfortable as it stands right now. I don't know. It shouldn't be for the law to make up, it should be for the schools and.
Well, I think, first of all, this is way too early to be making laws about things like this.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's way too early. Just started happening. So to be like, oh, we're going to pass laws. Like, how do you don't know anything. There's no psychological evidence of anything. There's no precedent for anything to be making laws for this. So that's the first thing.
Totally.
And then from that point, it's like once there is more evidence, then we can have this conversation. But it's like until then, it's like
But Caitlyn Jenner is a trans advocate because she was the first trans person that exists at that time, and she was also the first champion runner. Is that what she was? I don't know.
She was
I don't know.
What was she? She was a track. No, I would say not triathlete.
I think she was track.
I think she was she was a triathlete. I think.
Oh, she was a triathlete. Okay. Well.
I think
We're gonna end. We should talk about this before we actually sign out. So, what do we want to do in terms of new guests?
I think I had another guest that possibly might be interested in coming on. That would be more about. It would be another conversation about service industry. Bartending while black is what we probably call it.
Yeah, I want to do that more. I mean, there was my friend John Neely, who's been on the podcast, specifically brought up the idea of doing representation in service.
Right.
And the conversation we had with Stephanie was fascinating in respect to that. So that actually could be our easiest next to do panel, right?
Possibly, yeah.
But
I think so.
Let's bring on this guest next and see what happens. You told me that he's interested in talking about how the neighborhood has changed too.
Well, specifically, so as we are in Southwest Detroit, and the impact of Ford Motor Company is very large here, and how it's impacting properties, impacting the demographic in a good and a relatively, depends on your opinion, bad way, or at least different, I should say. He was saying like how some of the businesses could benefit from working with them, and some of them just won't be able to.
Right.
Fascinating conversation. At least it was short, and as this was at an establishment in the neighborhood, I felt like this would make a good conversation we had, particularly in Detroit, particularly just because it's also, I think, honestly, I think a natural conversation in a lot of places. So.
Right. And I have some leads on trans advocates that we can talk about trans issues, and then also potentially religious leaders, local Catholic leaders that can talk about leading congregations during COVID, which I'd be very interested in. But in any case, we're gonna do this shot, and then we're gonna do this outro video. In fact, we could even do it during.
I'm afraid your father will have to remain.
My friend sent me this today.
For several months. We'll be feeding him pure meat through a tube, just like you asked. In the meantime, let's go party all over Europe.
When people think of happiness or pursuing happiness, the first thing they think of is, well, it's a pretty selfish desire. I want to be happy for me.
Dennis Prager
wants to be unhappy. But I'm here to tell you that, in fact, happiness is far, far, far more than a selfish desire. It's actually a moral obligation. Whether or not you're happy, and certainly whether or not you act happy, is a very, very altruistic happy.
You ever been to one of these shows?
Make the world better.
No.
Unhappy people tend to make the world worse.
There's a scene in Pinocchio where Geppetto wishes on a star. Right? And what it means is he lifts up his eyes beyond the horizon to something
brilliant public speaker.
And so he lifts his eyes up above his daily concerns.
And they're
says,
exactly like this.
What I want more than anything else is that my creation will become a genuine individual. Right? It's a heroic gesture.
There is a lot of crying from Jordan Peterson.
The puppet's transformation into a real being. And we start as puppets. And so the trick is to get rid of the goddamn strings. I want to be like you, Mr. Peterson. Please tell me how to live.
I want to get into this because I think this is a fascinating thing with you personally. Your diet. You're on
the progression of Joe Rogan here is really good.
What's fascinating to me is I haven't heard any negative stories about people doing this.
Well, I have a negative story. Okay. When we restricted our diet and then ate something we weren't supposed to, the reaction was absolutely catastrophic.
What did you switch to?
Well, the worst response was some apple cider that had sulfites in it, and that was really not good. Like, I was done for a month.
It was really not good.
Oh, yeah, it took me out for a month. It was awful.
He just gets more demented and ape-looking.
Sulfites in it. What was it doing? Oh, it produced an overwhelming sense of impending doom.
This is all illustrations of actual podcast and lecture conversations had by Jordan Peterson. I don't know who that's supposed to be. That's Charlie Kirk.
If you love birds, you never want to walk under a window.
Trump, right? I don't know. I don't recognize him. Oh, that one preacher. I forget his name. Ben Shapiro.
Fear is a fact. There's no God over me. There's no policeman over me. There's no one over me. I am God.
Fucking cider.